So can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jules, and I live in Iceland. And I have a podcast and a YouTube channel called All Things Iceland, in which I talk about what life is like here for me. And I also interview other individuals to get insights from them about what life is like here. And that includes Icelanders, meaning people who were born and raised here, and foreign people who have come to live in Iceland.
Okay. And so where did you grow up?
I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. So I'm born and raised there, and I lived there for about 30 years. And I say 30 years, but like technically 4 years of my life, I went to college, which was upstate New York. So basically in New York, New York City or New York State is where I've lived until moving to Iceland in 2016.
Okay. And so how did it come this idea like to move out to Iceland?
It was definitely not my idea. Meaning, like, of all the places to move to in the world, Iceland was not on the list. Forget about the top of the list. It was not even there, right? Because my, I just never thought of Iceland as a place to go to. And this is,
Mm-hmm.
of course, way before Iceland became a popular destination. I ended up meeting, when I was in college, a guy who's Icelandic. His name is Orre. And we became friends. And then he had he had friends come over from Iceland to visit. And I went to a party he was throwing for his friends. And that's where I met Gunnar, who would later become my husband. I mean, it did not happen right away that we started dating or anything like that. And this is, I don't know, 13 years ago or something. So,
Okay. And so what was the reaction of your families or your friends when you say like you're going to move out to Iceland?
well, it's a kind of a like weird excitement and also fear for me because I'm a Black person moving from the US to Iceland, and Iceland is majority white country. And in the US, there's so many issues with race and specifically like white supremacy and discrimination and all these things. So growing up in an environment like that, your family immediately thinks that other white places are going to treat you the same. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a fear that, being in a country where people don't look like you, they wouldn't be as receptive and they might discriminate against me just because of, even if they're not really been in contact with Black people, they might just assume things from media or whatever else. And so I would say, like, definitely my mom and my grandmother were the most concerned and tried their best to kind of like, talk to me about like, be careful out there. And, if you don't feel comfortable, just try to like, watch your back and don't feel like, you be in a situation where you don't feel like it's safe or something like that, because they
Mm-hmm.
just didn't know anything about Iceland and also just didn't know how it would be received.
Okay. And did you have like any like stereotypes in your mind before moving out to Iceland or not
Not
really?
really, no, because I just had so much limited interaction with Icelanders. So Gunnar and I, my first visit to Iceland, I had been dating him in 2013 for about 6 months. So, the only Icelander I knew was him and Orre, right? And Orre was super nice, but like, I think it's ridiculous to be like, I know these two people. I know what Icelanders are like. You know what I mean? And people do this, of course, but I just decided I wasn't going to. I'd ask a lot of questions from Gunnar before going. And meeting his family was awesome. Like, they were just so welcoming to me and also just curious, and they were really happy that I had learned some Icelandic words before coming. I kind of felt like a little kid a little bit because I was like saying like colors and objects, and they're like, "Oh, good job," because Icelandic is difficult. And so, if anything, I just felt like it was such a beautiful interaction, and I immediately felt like I belonged. And I even remember one of his aunts, she tried to say it like, as a whisper, but she told him like, don't mess this up. So like I felt good being there. And in essence, even still, I mean, there's a lot of things Icelanders do, and I do talk about that in my YouTube videos. But as a whole, you can't really generalize them. But yeah, no, I didn't have a preconceived idea. I just went with the flow and hoped for the best.
Yeah. And I saw in your videos that you're studying Icelandic.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's your level? Can you like communicate to people and to?
I guess if you had to put me on a level, because I just finished a B2 course. So in Europe,
Yeah.
so that's where I am right now. I still need to always practice talking. That's the thing. It's so easy because we started our relationship in English that it's easy for me to and him to go back into English, but we're constantly just trying to remind each other to speak in Icelandic, and I have a tutor. So yeah, it's coming along. It's a journey. I'm trying not to also stress about that because I'm very easily overly critical about things that maybe this is the only thing in my life that's ever taken this long, in my opinion. Right? But then when I think about it, it's you were in school to learn English for many, many years. Icelanders have been in school to learn Icelandic for many, many years. It's not something that just automatically comes.
Okay. And so how long have you been learning it?
Off and on since I got here, but to be fair, the first year I spent the whole summer working a lot. I mean, I immediately started working once I got here. So literally the day I arrived, the very next day I started to work. So I arrived on June 21st and I started working June 22nd. And I've always worked a lot. Specifically, I had this marketing manager job, and I did take some courses at night in the fall of that year. And then I took a big break because I was basically my brain felt like it was melting. It was just so much work, meaning going from work to school and trying to finish homework and stuff like that. So I remember taking a big break, probably close to some mini months. And then I picked it back up again kind of casually on my own. And I realized that wasn't going so well. So I tried to take I got a tutor, but this is through another, not the one I have now. And I was kind of going off and on between finding tutors and stuff like that. So it took a little while before I found one that I really liked. And then I took a course for 3 weeks. But funny enough, kind of doing some stuff on my own and having some tutors helped to kind of push me along, even though my speaking was still not as great. And now it's way better, but it's just not I'm not expressing myself the way I would like to. That's the thing. It's kind of getting to that part where you feel like you can emotionally express how you're feeling instead of feeling like you're very limited in your words. So that's something I'm really working on, is expanding my vocabulary more and way of expression.
Okay. And so what kind of advice, if someone would like to learn Icelandic, what would you give as advice?
To be consistent and try not to pack in too much, because it is one of those long-term goal type of languages. There are some where you can learn, Spanish or French in 3 months. If you really just stick with it, you can absorb a lot more. It's just easier for you to understand. There are words in English that are similar. I mean, there are some words in English that are similar to Icelandic, but there are so many that are not. And then the grammar structure is so different. So unless you're going to school specifically, to get a BA in Icelandic, I recommend, of course, being consistent, meaning doing a little bit each day, but also just allowing yourself to do it over the long term. I had at one point that I was after 3 years, I should be fluent. Where did I come up with that? I just made it up, right? I had no idea. So it was just, and that was disheartening to me that I put this time limit on myself and I didn't achieve it because it was unrealistic, meaning it was just something I said, rather than going on and getting some professional advice about what would make sense, or putting myself on track with somebody or with a class or something like that would actually get me to where I want to be. So sometimes it's really going to suck. That's another thing. It could be really fun and it feels so nice in the beginning, especially when you don't know what you don't know. So the grammar part, you don't really have to worry about that in the very beginning, because you're just learning a lot of words usually, and you do get introduction to it. But eventually when you start to realize oh, there's there's so much declining that has to happen. There's declining of verbs, declining of nouns, declining of pronouns, like everything in 4 different cases. And it's just like, why is this even a thing? This is ridiculous. And in German, they have this as well. But just remember that it's a journey. Like, I've cried about it because I felt defeated, but then I realized that, like, you know, you can be your own worst enemy, meaning like you're, for me personally, because I'm very ambitious, trying to pack in too much. And I have to learn how to just like allow myself to do a little bit each day instead of trying to do too much and feeling like I'm going to burn out.
Exactly. And could you tell us, like, how do you say my name is in Icelandic?
Yeah, no problem. So it's ég heiti, which means, it literally is like, I am called. So ég heiti Jules.
Ég heiti?
Heiti.
Ég heiti.
Ég heiti Jules, or ég heiti. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce your name, if you could help me with that.
Ég heiti Aisa. Okay, it sounds not easy.
Yeah. Yep. That's super easy. I mean, it's quite nice. So.
Yeah. And how is it like living as a Black person in Iceland? Because, for example, I know in Berlin, for me, it was complicated because I grew up in France and it was very like another dynamics. And here, like, people just discovering about racism. When I was here telling that people I experienced a lot of racist experiences, they wouldn't believe me and so on. They were gaslighting, and there's a lot of fetishization. So, and also people are staring at you and being, you want to call them out because they don't want to recognize the fact that they're being racist, and they don't want to question themselves, and also they don't recognize Nazism, white supremacy. So all of that impact in Berlin. So how it is like the context in Iceland?
Yeah, there is definitely some of that, meaning like, it varies a lot. I mean, there's meaning like who you know and who you're interacting with, because there are a lot of liberal people in Iceland, meaning like, and I don't mean liberal like, oh, they're open to everybody, but meaning like they're more aware. And then you have some people who are just like, they literally have no idea why this specific thing, like there's this book that was published called 10 Little Negro Boys. And a lot of people here grew up with this book. And it's pretty racist book, right? Like, it's just like the caricatures and everything are based off of caricatures in the US that would show like these very racist images, cartoon images of Black people. And people were like, no, but this is a great thing. And it's like, when it's being brought to their attention, they're like, no, it's not racism. And it's like, yes, it is. I'm telling you, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those, like, you feel like, it's just real right now, right? Like, you feel like you're in a Twilight Zone or something. So those type of topics, especially when it hits close to people's like memories or nostalgia or whatever, all of a sudden they go like, no, but that's not how we do it here. And it's like, but it's based off of this, and this is what I'm telling you. You're basically feeding into that, even if you don't innately or inside feel this way, you know, and listening to the people who are affected by it. On the other hand, you know, you have people who are trying their best to understand and listen. And when we had our gathering for the Black Lives Matter movement, but specifically after George Floyd's death, which obviously Black Lives Matter has been doing work for many years, but there's been, you know, more knowledge about it worldwide now. And so after that, and then other people being brutalized by the police or killed by the police, and the speakers at that event in Reykjavik, which around 4,000 people came out for this specific event, which was quite a lot for this small country. Yeah. And that was a good sign, because like the event was people talking about the history of racism in the United States and why it's so important that we are acknowledging it, but also at home, like meaning here in Iceland, acknowledging that there are problems here too. It shouldn't just stop with this instance. It shouldn't just stop with this gathering. And I thought that was just really powerful to see how many people support it and are learning, and were devastated, you know, to hear about Emmett Till, for instance. This young boy basically was lynched and beaten to the point of like his face, everything is just unrecognizable. And it's just, you know, like people hear that history and they're like, what? Or like, you know, the suppression of the oppression of Black people in the United States is just like, they thought after the civil rights movement, it was over. as if things are just
Oh.
a switch was flipped and it's fine because they don't have to worry about it. That's the thing. It's like if it's not affecting you, it's very easy to ignore it or not even have any type of awareness about it. And so there has been a lot of talk in the country where people here who are mixed with, Icelandic or maybe, Chilean or mixed with some Asian country in Icelandic or mixed with Congolese, like whatever it might be. And they're talking about their experiences and how they've been felt different. And they are Icelandic. That's the thing. And Icelanders treating them as if they might not be. Not every one of them, but like if they go into a store and a person immediately speaks to them in English because of the way they look. Or literally, I just had an interview with a young woman. Her name is Birta Apipa, and she was Miss Iceland 2019. She's of mixed race, and she experienced really harsh racism as a young kid growing up. So because her middle name Apipa is close to Api, which means like ape in Icelandic, people would call her Birta Api, like Birta ape. And of course that really hurts her feelings, right? But it's got worse than that. And people would she had been called the N-word before. And this is in school, some kid kicked her in the ribs. Like it was just like, yeah, exactly. It's just really disgusting. And the conversation around race and education around race, that's what's something that she's advocating for. So for me personally, if you want to know that experience, I've had a very positive experience. Like I mentioned though, because it might be like who I surround myself with. I mean, I've been very fortunate in that regard to be around people who are a lot more kind of like worldly view-wise in terms of about race, about feminism, about all these things. And so I end up being a bit in a bubble, and I didn't grow up here. And so then you have people like Birta, who is Icelandic, grew up here, looked different, and had a really hard time, and has had a hard time with, the different types of, perceptions about her just based off of how she looks. And even being, when she went to Miss Universe, she said that one of the women, I can't remember exactly the country, from another country, but in Africa, has said to her, when Birta said that she had experienced racism and because she's Black, and that person was like, "You're not Black." You know what I mean? Like, meaning to them, she's so light that in their country, she would not be considered Black. So they were surprised that she would be experiencing racism. And it was just like invalidating her experience of being like, and it's just like, what? And this is, a hard thing for someone to imagine that what you consider, maybe not to be Black, for that person in that country it is, and they're telling you their experience, so it's crazy. It can happen everywhere. And in Iceland is no different. I've also had an interview with this woman who's doing research or has been doing research over the last decade about white supremacy, racism, and Nordic exceptionalism in Iceland. Her name is Dr. Kristín Loftsdóttir. And that was the eye-opening moment for me. That was very hard because I realized I had on some rose-colored glasses the whole time I've been here, and like this movement for Black Lives Matter, it made me start to question like what's going on in Iceland. This is before talking to Birta. I did this maybe some months ago. And then I, interviewed this person, and it was just like, oh no, like it really is everywhere. And Iceland was a colony of Denmark, but not in the same way that some other places were colonies, meaning like majority Black places were colonies where they were being brutalized and enslaved, but Iceland was still under the thumb of the Danish king, and were poverty stricken, but they wanted to, in Iceland, they've had a history of trying to make themselves look more sophisticated so that they wouldn't be grouped in with other cultures that were considered savages, like Greenland, for instance, like just other places that are, where native would be a negative word. In fact, savage is like the more harsher word, whereas native is supposed to be like the nicer way of saying that this person is primitive. So this is, it was such a crazy interview for me, like inside, because I was just like, oh, but I had to come to terms with it and I had to learn about it. And I think this has helped me in terms of having a better idea what other people are going through here as I'm navigating it in my own way.
Okay. And so, have you ever had like a cultural shock when while living in Iceland?
Well, living here, I mean, the being stared at thing is never easy. I didn't have that problem in New York City, mainly because people in New York City just don't stare at each other. It's rude, meaning like, you think somebody has a problem with you if they're staring at
Mm.
you, or if a guy's doing it, then it's disrespectful, meaning like they're probably going to catcall you or something that you're not wanting, this unwanted attention. So in Iceland, though, and I'm not saying that they do it the same way with people who look different, but it is true that I've seen other Icelanders stare at each other, because sometimes they're like trying to recognize who that person is. But I definitely noticed that when it's a person of color, they stare a little bit longer. And it could be like a person with a mohawk, they stare a little bit longer, but there is this kind of like way too long of a stare. You're looking like, and I started staring back. So like, some people say they smile. My initial reaction when someone's looking at me, because I am from New York, it's not to just smile at people, right? It's just look at you like, is there something wrong? Like, what, is there something I need to know? And so that has been interesting and shocking to the point where I literally remember this moment. I was walking in and this happens not in like downtown Reykjavik where you'll see a lot more tourists. I'm talking about in the areas where people live their daily lives, like in the suburbs. And so we were living in this one suburb. I was walking down the street and this lady is driving her car and she literally is turning her neck to look at me. She's not looking in front of her, right? It's just like, and I was like, what the hell? Like, you can't be that shocked to see me, right? I'm the only person on the block, so I know it's me. And you can't be that shocked that you're literally willing to almost get into a car accident. So yeah, it was, that part has been shocking. I've gotten over it, meaning like if people stare, they stare. I just don't even care anymore. If I want to look at you back, I will. Most of the time, I just ignore it. Like I put on my New York blinders, and I'm going about my day. Like I'm very good at avoiding people's gaze. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's just kind of my own way of coping with it. And I visited so many times before moving that I wasn't really shocked by a whole lot.
Mm.
It's just more about knowing what those things were even before I came, and sometimes being like, it's really weird to think that you do this, like leaving your kid out in a stroller for a nap in the weather. Like it's just, and that they're like, oh, the kid gets fresh air, and that part is always like, and the parent is just inside the house chilling out,
Yeah.
where they crack the door to listen to hear if the kid is outside, like crying or anything. And that's just not something that, I mean, we don't have children. We've talked about it. And I just don't think I could be able to do it. I'm just too afraid,
Yeah.
they're like, no, yeah.
Okay. And so, what do you like about the Icelandic culture?
I like that it's very family oriented. So during the holidays, especially, we get together with the family. I don't know how it's going to be this holiday because COVID. And my mother-in-law, who is the sweetest, she is like a lovely person. Everybody who meets her loves her. And it's weird to say that because you would think that, no, that's not possible. But she like treats everybody like they're her own kid. And when she was able to hug people, she gives you like that like tightest hug, as if she's just like so happy to just see you. You're so, in that moment, she's just focusing on you. And she has an autoimmune disease, so she's been quarantining herself. She doesn't have the virus or hasn't been exposed to it, but is trying to keep from getting that. So she's the matriarch of the family, and it's really hard not to be able to see her and, hug her and stuff like that. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but yeah, the people have just been really warm to me. Like even with the podcast and with YouTube, like I get a decent amount of people that are Icelandic that follow, and they'll say stuff and they'll be like, "Well, you're so happy that you're kind of digging into these topics or talking about it," because like I'm doing it coming from a place of I'm learning, but also appreciation. Like I really love Iceland. Like I've had a great time here, and I hope that continues. I have learned so much. Like a big thing for me is, since the language just felt like it's taken so long, is All Things Iceland has been my way of assimilating into the culture, right? I get to be like this curious kid who asks a lot of questions and learn a lot. And I think people have been appreciative of it because I'm coming from a good place. I'm not trying to be overly critical and just, yeah, be open-minded about it. And that part to me has been really nice. um, Icelandic culture, it's very dynamic. I mean, even though there's certain things that are set, like there's certain types of traditions, I've been very surprised at how open they are to different trends, especially when it comes to food, because Iceland is not known for veganism, for instance. I mean, like, they import a lot of their vegetables, and before they could do that, they were eating a lot of potatoes and meat, like lamb and things like that. So it wasn't as if the culture was brought up on kind of having certain foods available.
Mm-hmm.
But veganism is something that, like, in every restaurant you can find a vegan dish practically. I mean, literally, there's a restaurant here called Meat Reykjavik, and they have vegan food, right? So it's just like, okay, so that part has been amazing, and I only eat vegan food. So yeah, it's just kind of fascinating, like the trends that Icelanders are willing to take on, and yet they, alongside the kind of modern stuff they do, they have their traditions.
Okay. And so what you don't like about, for example, the Icelandic culture?
What I don't like, I'm not a huge fan of this fermented food. I don't eat it anymore. Like, I haven't eaten any kind of animal product in like the last 5 years, but I do not like a fermented shark. I've tried that. It was awful.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's just not my thing. And then fermented skate. So it's a type of fish, and they have it on December 23rd every year. It's called skata in Icelandic, and yeah, it's so smelly that people often don't make it in their homes. They go to a restaurant to get it because their house will smell so bad, and it seeps into their clothing. Like, it's just not good. So I'm not a huge fan of the fermented food stuff. And is there anything else culture wise? Because most of the culture stuff, if I don't really care that much for it, I just don't do it. Like, that's kind of a good thing about being a foreigner, of being like, they'll just be like, oh, well, she doesn't get it, she's not from here. And you're like, yep. I'm just not going to do it, actually. So I don't feel the obligation. And my husband, maybe because he's been away for so long, he's not a very typical Icelander. Like, I remember most of the holidays, and he doesn't. He doesn't remember all of them unless we, like, have a conversation. They'll be like, oh, yeah, we do this. Because he's just, like, living his life. He doesn't have to worry about any of it, So he knows someone that in his family or I will remember it and do it. So yeah. Now I can't really think of anything else that is a huge bother for me.
Okay. And so can you explain about your YouTube channel, for example?
Sure. So originally, when I started the YouTube channel, the idea, because it's also called All Things Iceland. So everything about me, even like my Instagram, is called All Things Iceland. And essentially, my thing was, the way I would make my podcast would kind of feel a little bit like NPR, right? So it has like the interviews, but also me talking about myself, about different things, but it's more kind of chilled vibe. But my YouTube channel is a lot more high energy. It's kind of, maybe it's the dual side of me. I'm a Gemini, and so they say that he's like, the twins, whatever. So I kind of feel like I'm playing off of both of those with the channel and the podcast. And so on YouTube, I, for the most part, was just making it all about my experiences and talking about cultural things here in Iceland, or going on like travel adventures. Like recently I did this Golden Circle thing, and it was kind of like really fun outdoorsy stuff, showcasing, even if I'm only talking about one topic, still doing it outdoors if I can. Like, that's something I've done more recently, just to kind of give people an idea of the different landscapes here. But literally as of last week, I started putting up video interviews, so virtual video interviews, because of COVID and you can't actually meet people in person. And that's something that I want to continue. And it's the same, you'll find it the same on the All Things Iceland podcast. So if you want to listen to it in video, or if you want to listen to an audio, that's, same one, you just could see us interacting. And the whole idea behind both of them is that I'm giving you the inside scoop on Icelandic culture, nature, history, and language. So I'm interested in literally all things Iceland. There's nothing off the table. And that's why I called it that, because I didn't want to feel bogged down to travel or just to interviews or whatever. And this has given me a great way, like I mentioned, of not only assimilating, but kind of giving people insights that they didn't have access to before.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And if you could give some advice about places to visit in Iceland, what places could we visit?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how long you're going to be here. And most people, they will come, some people come for like, the weekend or something, which I think is such a short time, honestly. Like 3 days is not enough. I don't even think 5 days is enough. If you could do 10 days, 10 to 14 days, you can do a lot, especially in the summertime because the days are longer. And it's just, that's another good thing to know is that winter, the days are much shorter. And not just like, oh, like in New York, the days are shorter from like 7 o'clock in the morning to 5 or 6 o'clock at night. Here, the shortest day is from 11 o'clock in the morning to 3 p.m. Right? So it's like, it's very, very short. And so that's not the only day, but it's just like, just keeping in mind that summertime is popular because you have 24-hour brightness. And if you come then, the South Coast is very popular. However, many people go to the South Coast and then don't go other places, and they're just missing out on all this amazing nature. If you love nature, or even if you're not a lover of nature, I feel like Iceland will bring that out of you. It will foster it within your soul because it's just so beautiful. And so let's just say you had 10 days, right? I would definitely go, of course, to the South Coast because it is popular. The Reykjanes Peninsula is the same peninsula that people fly into in Keflavik Airport. And yet they don't realize that when they fly in, because all they're seeing is like lava rock fields, that there's so much to this area. So like just, you can go on a day drive and see like black sand beaches that nobody else is at. So along the South Coast in Vik area, that's where you'll see like or Reynisfjörður, you'll see the black sand beaches there, or black sand beach there, and people are like, oh, that's the iconic one. It's like, well, that's because that's what you've seen on Instagram. But black sand beaches are beautiful everywhere in Iceland, right? So you don't just have to go there. And so Reykjanes Peninsula is definitely a place to go. And Snæfellsnes Peninsula. So this is another one that's like maybe a 3-hour drive, 2.5, 3-hour drive. And you could do that in a day as well. If you want to go around the country, I just did in July, Gunnar and I did a 2-week tour. We did a whole lot. I mean, granted, we went to the West Fjords, which is off the Ring Road, but it's gorgeous. And then we went to the north. So there's like 2 weeks gives you a lot. 10 days, you'd really be like squeezing it. You could do a lot, but you would probably not sleep that much. FYI. But still, it's like, every part of the country, in my opinion, is great. The one place that even less people probably go to is the Highlands. And that's because it's harder to get to. And you don't do it in a rental car. If you don't know how to cross rivers and, read rivers, if you don't even know what I'm talking about when I say how to read a river, then you don't know how to cross a river. So like, meaning there are rivers that are coming up like almost, as high as you in the car. And if you don't have the type of exhaust and everything, you can ruin the exhaust in your rental car, and that's not covered in the insurance. So you have to buy the rental car company a whole new car. Yeah, it's just like certain things that you just have to know, or you could die. I mean, like that's worse, of course. But but for some people, it's like I have to buy you a new car. And Iceland cars are expensive. They're usually like double the price they are in the U.S. or like other places where it's less expensive. So
okay,
yeah. So yeah, and of course, if you can go into highlands like Thorsmork or Landmannalaugar, those are 2 places that I absolutely love, and those are day trips that you can do.
Okay.
Going on a glacier, definitely go on a glacier. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I have a lot of different things there. Like.
And is there anything you want to add or final words?
I'd say that like from just my experience overall as a person who first came visiting and then has been living here for more than 4 years, that I can say for sure that I believe Iceland is a great destination for everybody. Of course, when you hear about the inner workings of a place, meaning like every place has their bias and stuff like that, that can it could feel a little discouraging. But I know of a lot of people who have come here who are people of color, who are Black, and have felt very happy and comfortable and accepted here. And I hope that's something that continues. Of course, when COVID is not such a danger to people or completely wiped out, whatever, and people can actually travel, that more people come here and explore it and just allow themselves to be open to this type of destination, because I think it not only you'll feel welcomed, but you also open up something inside of yourself that you might not have experienced before, especially seeing glaciers in different places are becoming so much harder to access. And I think it's like Iceland and Alaska are last two of the last places that are much easier to get on a glacier than other areas in the world. So, or maybe Greenland, of course, at some point. Depending if you're in their winter, it's a different experience. But yeah, it's just something that I think is great, and I hope that what I'm sharing, and of course, if people want more information, they can always check out the channels that we've been talking about for all things Iceland. But also that you just allow yourself to be open to it, because it is, in my opinion, worth it, an experience that will be unforgettable.